Welcome to Jewish Studies CPD 2019-2020, Teaching, Learning and Assessment. This is the second part of 3 parts of this CPD. Part 2 focuses on planning. The learning intention for this part of the CPD is to appreciate the importance of planning for teaching, learning and assessment in Jewish Studies. The first of the NCCA toolkit booklets to support formative assessment in our classrooms is called Learning Intentions and Success Criteria. It states that learning intentions describe what the teacher wants students to know, understand and be able to do as a result of the learning activities in a given lesson. At the start of each screencast, I model the practice of presenting learning intentions to communicate where the learning is going. Effective learning intentions will always be linked to the intended learning, focus on the learning and not the doing, be written in student-friendly language, focus on what the students will be able to do by the end of the lesson, be broad enough so that they do not narrow the range of learning experiences, and be SMART. The SMART acronym states that learning intentions should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. We'll take a moment to pause and reflect individually on the following 3 statements and see if you agree or disagree with them. If you would like to pause the recording to give you appropriate time to reflect on the statements, please do so now. I'm now going to walk you through the planning process for a unit of learning. Reflection, as you will see down the bottom, takes place before, during and after a unit of learning. The starting point is to reflect on the learning outcomes, remembering there are 27 learning outcomes that can be linked across the strands. Consider the age and stage of learning for your students. Identify the parts of the learning outcomes you wish to focus on. Key learning is the learning students will be able to demonstrate at the end of this unit of learning. You decide that as a department. Ongoing assessment. Decide what opportunities you will give the students to demonstrate what they know, understand and are able to do with the intended learning. Learning experiences. Organize learning activities to achieve the intended learning. And finally, learning intentions. Design SMART, student-friendly statements that clearly outline the intended learning and share with the students. For this unit of learning that we're going to use as an example, we have chosen 4 learning outcomes. These are 1.3, 1.2, 1.6 and 2.6. Take a moment now to pause and reflect on them. You will notice that parts of them are in bold. These are the parts that are going to be relevant to this unit of learning. It's always good to remember that a learning outcome does not have to be used in its entirety every time that it is part of a unit of learning. After exploring the learning outcomes, we must decide what key learning is going to take place. This is what we want students to be able to demonstrate at the end of a unit of learning. For this unit of learning, the key learning is why remembrance events are important in the lives of Jewish people, reflection on the Holocaust Memorial Day event in Dublin 2020 and identifying some of the key significant messages from it, examples of how Holocaust survivors express their experience in literature and art, examining the experience of Holocaust survivor Tommy Reichenthal, and researching the contribution of Tommy Reichenthal to academia and why he is a key person in the Irish Jewish community. Ongoing assessment. This is where we decide what opportunities we will give the students to demonstrate what they know, understand and are able to do with the intended learning. For this unit of learning, ongoing assessment will include prior knowledge checks, oral questioning class discussions, research worksheet, a presentation on their research on Tommy Reichenthal, and an end of unit test. When you are clear on the key learning and ongoing assessment, you can plan learning experiences to help students achieve the learning. We will explore some of the possible learner experiences that might be part of this unit of learning shortly. We will begin by looking at sample learning intentions for a series of lessons within this unit of learning. They are: you will reflect on the importance of remembrance events in the lives of Jewish people. You will research the life of Tommy Reichenthal and his experience as a victim of the Holocaust. And you will explore the contribution of Tommy Reichenthal to remembering the Holocaust. When starting a unit of learning, it is useful to gather prior knowledge within the class. For example, we might ask students why they think remembrance events are significant in Judaism. In this example, the answers were given using Menti.com. Mentimeter is a website that allows you to engage and interact with your students who can give their answers using a mobile phone or any other device connected to the internet. Alternatively, you could gather answers orally or using post-its. The main thing is to gauge the students' prior knowledge that is relevant to this unit and then to build on that. As part of this unit of learning, a lesson might include an exploration of how survivors of the Holocaust expressed their experiences through an examination of art. I will now demonstrate a thinking routine activity that is an interesting way for students to examine artwork. This thinking routine is called See, Think, Wonder. It consists of 3 questions. What do you see? And students should start their replies with I see. What do you think about that? With replies starting I think. And finally, what does it make you wonder? With replies starting with I wonder. As these questions are designed to stimulate curiosity and do not depend on prior knowledge, we could in fact start our whole unit by introducing an image like this and asking these broad questions that give students time to explore an image without providing all of the information first, letting them have a sense of discovery and curiosity through questioning. There is a template to use for this activity on page 8 of your booklet. This is also available on the JCT website should you wish to download it or email it to students and share with them. There is a copy of the image on page 9 in your booklet for today's activity. So on the next slide, I'm going to invite you to actually pause the presentation and using page 8 of the booklet, write down what you see, think and wonder when you look at this image. You are looking at both the image being held up by the artist as well as the artist. There's no need to worry about being right or wrong here. It's about really taking enough time to explore what is in front of you and simply stating what you see, what you think about that, and what it makes you wonder. So here's where you can pause the presentation if you wish to answer the 3 questions based on the image. After giving students the time to reflect and share what they see, think and wonder, you can provide further information about the image or let them carry out research about it. The image we chose is of artist and Holocaust survivor Chaya Stoika, holding up one of her paintings based on her experiences of Nazi atrocities. She began expressing her experiences through art in the 1980s. Her paintings often lack titles. They are seldom needed. In this one, a train travels into a red sky along a track etched with a swastika. A learner experience that could help students achieve the learning in this unit is to listen to a Holocaust survivor speak. If that is not possible in person, there are many good audiovisual clips available. We will begin our research on Tommy Reichenthal by watching a clip from when he won International Person of the Year at the People of the Year Awards on RTE1. This clip gives a comprehensive overview of Tommy and his achievements in highlighting the consequences and experiences of the Holocaust. There is space in your resource booklet on page 4 to take down some notes on the short clip you are about to see. The prompt question that will scaffold the research is to outline how Tommy supports remembrance through the work he engages with.
Tommy Reichenthal is a retired engineer who's originally from Slovakia but has lived in Ireland since 1959. He is also a Holocaust survivor, having been held in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp as a 9-year-old boy.
I never spoke to anybody what we went through, and I kept it like this for, well, 60 years.
Then, one day in 2004, Tommy's grandson Josh mentioned it in a class discussion about World War II.
And a quiet little voice said to me that my grandfather was in a concentration camp. And the quietness of it, and obviously what he had said, stopped the class. And it was from that I just said to him, well, maybe he might come in and talk to us.
And that was the first time I spoke to 12-year-old children. And suddenly I saw the children around me. They were all crying. I was crying. The teacher was crying. And maybe at the time I sort of realized that I was one of the last witnesses for this horrific thing that happened. My cousins and uncle, aunts, my grandparents from my father's side. About 30 people were taken away. We said goodbye to them. We didn't even cry for them. We said when all this is over, we will be reunited and everything will be all right. But unfortunately, we never saw them again. My name is Tommy Reichenthal. I'm living in Ireland for over 50 years. I mean, by now I spoke to over 550 schools here in Ireland, to nearly 70,000 students, directly speaking to them.
When you're sitting in a room and you're looking at someone who has been there, who has survived it, it's hard not to feel the emotions, and it can't compare to just reading it from a textbook.
He makes sure that we can never be allowed to forget, because one of the most important things about history is that we learn from our past mistakes.
Tommy is one of only 2 remaining Holocaust survivors in Ireland.
When you speak, it's back to the past again. You're starting to relive it all again, and it isn't easy to do it. So I know that the same for Tommy. You're just emotionally drained from it all, and you really don't want to have a conversation with anybody because you've lived through it again.
In the documentary Close to Evil, Tommy met Alexander Zenth, whose grandfather was the Nazi responsible for deporting thousands of Slovakian Jews to concentration camps, including Tommy's family.
He represents this big heart, the capacity to be open to forgiveness. He also represents the importance of memory, because how can you forgive? How can you reconcile if you don't deeply get to grips with what happened in the past?
I have to speak out because I owe it to the victims that their memory is not forgotten.
So we can see from that short audiovisual clip the work being completed by Tommy and how it highlights the significance of remembering the experiences of a Holocaust survivor. Watching clips like this is an engaging way for students to explore a topic. If we want them to do further research, we would want them to also have other sources of information. For this sample unit of learning, we have compiled a number of resources that could be used in conjunction with the clip for research. These are available on the JCT website. There you will find an article from the independent.ie on Tommy Reichenthal's book, I Was a Boy in Belsen, depicting the first-hand experience of a victim of the Holocaust and life in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. The second is the keynote speech from President Michael D. Higgins from the Holocaust Memorial Service in Dublin in January 2020. We've also provided a digital copy of the Remembrance booklet that gives an overview of the significance of remembrance events such as that one. Students could collaboratively engage with these resources to assist in scaffolding their research. You might want to take some time now to pause and reflect on these resources. You can use page 4 of your booklet to record any notes for yourself. A key part of the assessment for this unit of learning might be asking the students to present their research. Students could be given a choice as to how they want to present it, as this will be the case with the CBAs. Just like when we talk about planning and we emphasise the importance of planning for assessment at the start of a unit, we can also share the assessment with the students at the start of the unit of learning as well. This will help scaffold their learning. It puts them at the centre of the learning and allows them to consider the assessment throughout the unit of learning. So, for example, students might be told that they have to present research on a remembrance event celebrating the life of a Holocaust survivor. When students are ready to work on this assessment, they need to know the success criteria to scaffold their work. Success criteria are linked to learning intentions. They are developed by the teacher and/or the student and describe what success looks like. They help the teacher and student to make judgments about the quality of student learning. Success criteria must link clearly to the learning intention. They need to be planned in advance of the assessment. They need to be owned by the student. They need to be broad enough to include all abilities in a class. And they lead to more focused and successful teaching and learning. Success criteria are linked to the learning intentions, but it is important to remember that the learning intentions are linked to the learning outcomes, so we are always referring back to the specification. You might want to pause this screencast now to reflect on the success criteria you might come up with for this assessment. What would a good presentation contain? Remember, the format could vary, so the focus is the content. Pay careful consideration to the learning intentions, they are here for you. There is also space on page 5 of your booklet if you want to jot down some notes to share your ideas of the success criteria for this assessment. This brings the unit of learning to a conclusion. You might want to pause and reflect on this unit of learning. How does it compare with your current unit plans? The next slide is a recap of the planning process that will assist you in future planning. Departmentally, you decide on learning outcomes, key learning and ongoing assessment. The learning experiences can be created at a department level or by the individual teacher. The learning intentions are for a teacher to share with their own classes. They do not have to be written in the plan. The success criteria can be created by the teacher or co-constructed with the students. These would not have to be part of the written unit plan either. Again, the important thing about success criteria is that they are shared with the students and written for them. It is always important to remember that the action verbs in the learning outcomes chosen for a unit of learning are helpful because they clarify what the learner should be able to do once they have achieved the learning. You will find a glossary of our action verbs on page 10 and 11 of the booklet, and this action verbs poster is also available on the JCT website. For the purpose of the unit of learning that we used as a sample today, there were 4 learning outcomes, and the action verbs found in those were discuss, examine, research and explore. So you can see how those action verbs very much influence the learning experiences that we demonstrated to support the key learning. The learning intention for this CPD session was to appreciate the importance of planning for teaching, learning and assessment in Jewish studies. Part 3 of this CPD will focus on formative assessment in Jewish studies. Thank you for taking part in this CPD session. If you have any further queries, please get in touch via email to info@jct.ie, marked for the attention of the Jewish Studies team. And also please remember to submit your feedback via the JCT website. Thank you.